Hey, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thanks for tuning in with me today. I'm going to give everybody a second to just go ahead and get on, and we'll get started in just a minute. Alright, I'm going to be reading off of my phone. 9 times out of 10, I do just want to say that I'm going to be reading off of something. You know, I like to write what I'm going to be saying down, so my thoughts are just a little more organized in an order. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's bow our heads and pray. Yah, we are blessed to be gathered here today in your honor, to be humbled and to delight in your book of truth and knowledge. We ask that you guide us through our service today and allow your knowledge to be received onto our hearts. Amen. Alright, so today is going to start part 1 of my 3-part series on worldly traditions. And worldly traditions, it's a really hot topic amongst most of the Christian community, and I've created this 3-part series that is going to break down the different kinds of worldly traditions and talk about how dangerous they are. And this entire 3-part series is going to tie into my first sermon, What is Faith? And you can now find that on my website on the related content page under the other related content section of the page, which is where I'm going to start linking all of my past sermons. And this whole series is going to establish why having the faith and completely surrendering to Yeshua is so very, very vital. And I ask that you guys stay with me today. This one's going to be kind of long, but just stay with me till the end. Promise it's going to be good. So, worldly traditions. What are they? It's important that we establish this first. So, a worldly tradition is a tradition that was created by man. But it's not just any kind of tradition created by man. It's one that exalts itself over Yah and over his traditions that he's laid out for us. And the Bible's very clear on what traditions we're supposed to keep and what traditions Yah has condemned. And that brings us to the first part of our worldly traditions series, which we're going to talk about the Sabbath day. And we're all well aware that the 4th commandment says to keep the 7th day Sabbath. But yet so many people keep the first day, or some keep whatever day they feel like. And some people keep no day at all. They argue that the Sabbath and the law was abolished with Yeshua on the cross. So let's begin with Sunday. So how did Sunday become the day of rest? Well, it all started with Rome. Rome is basically the birthplace of what we call today modern Christianity. They not only mainstreamed it, they also changed a lot of the laws and the traditions. And it's funny because if you look at all the false teachings and the false doctrine that has been spread throughout Christianity, you can trace all of it back to Rome. So they're the ones that are keeping the ways of Babylon alive. So in about 125 AD, there was a huge rebellion amongst the Jews and the Romans. The Jews were rebelling. And the Romans, who were actually still mostly a pagan nation at the time, keep this in mind. We're not going to get to this today, but just keep it in mind that Rome was once a pagan nation, okay, for a long time, very long time. Just keep that in mind. The Romans were persecuting the Jews who didn't believe in the Messiah. So finally, all the Jews fled out of Jerusalem because it wasn't safe to be there anymore, and they spread out. And obviously, they spread the word of Yah and the testimony of Yeshua with them. And the persecutions started getting so bad that one day a Roman father who was amongst the Roman followers of Yeshua said that we don't need to keep these traditions anymore. We're going to change them. Because Rome's killing the Jews, and we don't want to look like them. We don't want to get categorized with them, because then they might start killing us too. So they took all the days and they changed them, and quite a few holy days over time have just stopped being celebrated altogether, and thus Catholicism was born. And then in 327 AD, Constantine came along, and he made it the law in Rome that Sunday be observed as the Sabbath day, not Saturday, which also ties into paganism, and we're gonna get to that. Not today though, but we will get to that. And for centuries after Messiah came, died, and resurrected, people kept the seventh day, or Saturday, Sabbath. Paul continued to keep the seventh-day Sabbath. Many churches in Europe outside of Rome, up until about the 1600s, maybe even the 1700s, didn't agree with Sunday Sabbath and rejected it and still kept Saturday. And people tried to justify observing Sunday nowadays with Colossians chapter 2, line 14, blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which was contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to his cross. But if you keep on reading, you can get the full context of what's really being said here. So if we continue on to verses 15 through 20, we'll see it. So Colossians chapter 2, lines 15 through 20, and having spoiled principalities and powers, he made a shew of them openly, triumphing over them in it. Let no man therefore judge you in meat, or in drink, or in respect of any holy day, or of the new moon, or of the Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come. But the body is of Yeshua. Let no man beguile you of your reward in a voluntary humility and worshipping of Elohim, intruding into those things which he hath not seen, vainly puffed up by his fleshly mind, and not holding the head, from which all the body by the joints and bands, having nourishment ministered and knit together, increaseth with the increase of Yah. Wherefore if ye be dead with Yeshua from the rudiments of the world, why, as though living in the world, are ye subject to ordinances? So something completely different is being said here, and that's why we shouldn't just take one or two verses of scripture and just run with it. We need the whole picture. And the beginning talks about what Messiah did for us, how we're bad, and we have spoiled principles, and those that had the law against them. And we're going to get to what that means in just a minute. Bear with me. Which is contrary to who Yah and Yeshua are, and it's contrary to what we are supposed to be in this life. And Yeshua willingly took those burdens from us on the cross. But did he take the law? Let's keep going. It goes on to say that he made a shew of them openly, the sinners, triumphing over them in it. Yeshua led a perfect life. Yeshua kept the law, including the fourth commandment, which is to keep the seventh-day Sabbath. Yeshua kept the feasts of his Father. He triumphed over sin in his life, and he was tempted quite a few times. And it goes on to say, let no man judge you about the meat you eat, or what you drink, or your holy days, or Sabbath, or the new moon. But what's actually being said here is Yah saying, you know my ways. You know what's in line with Torah and what's not. Let no man judge you for keeping my days, for eating the meat I said was clean, or drinking what I said was okay, or tracking the new moon, which is how the Hebrews actually based their calendar off of tracking in the new moon. The book of Enoch actually talks about that. And then it says, they're a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Yeshua. Meaning all these things are going to play a really big part in the end times, and they all lead to Yeshua and his second coming. And they also foreshadowed his coming the first time as well. Let no man beguile you of your reward in a voluntary humility and worshipping of Elohim, intruding into things he hasn't seen, vainly puffed up by his fleshly mind. Here, Paul is saying, let no man talk against you or cast doubt in your mind for voluntarily surrendering to Torah and Yeshua and for worshipping Yah. These people speak of things they know nothing about, puffed up by their false egos. It's our fleshly desires that cause us to turn away or reject Yah's word in the first place. And then it says, and not holding the head, from which all the body by the joints and bands have nourishment ministered and knit together, increaseth with the increase of Yah. So these people are proud and puffed up on their egos instead of holding their heads high. If we keep Yah's word, he will nourish our minds and give us the knowledge we need to understand his word. And how do we do this? By reading the Bible. You gotta read your Bible. Get it out and start reading it today. When we read Yah's word, we not only learn his truth, but we build a relationship with him, which is what he wants. He desires to have a loving relationship with you. And lastly, it says, wherefore, if ye be dead with Yeshua from the rudiments of the world, why, as though living in the world, are ye subject to ordinances? And basically, Paul is saying here that you can't sleep in Yeshua, which is what the people who are dead and saved in Yeshua are doing. They are in the ground, sleeping in Yeshua. If you live a life free of the principles of the law, for the living are subject to its ordinance. All of them. All of the ordinances. All of the living are subject to all of the ordinances of the law. Okay, so now I want to move back to that phrase earlier about having the law against you. What does that mean? Well, Paul talks about this too. So let's see what he says. In the first book of Timothy, chapter 1, line 8 through 10, "But we know that the law is good, if a man use it lawfully, knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous man, but for the lawless and disobedient, for the ungodly and for sinners, for unholy and profane, for murderers of fathers and murderers of mothers, for manslayers, for whoremongers, for them that defile themselves with mankind, for men stealers, for liars, for perturbed persons. And if there be any other thing that is contrary to sound doctrine." So Paul confirms right here that who is the law for? It's for the lawless, the ungodly, the sinners. It's not for the righteous man, because the righteous man is already keeping the law. The law can't lay against someone who's already keeping its commands. That makes absolutely no sense. The law lays against those not keeping its commands, and then the law condemns them, keeping them from being redeemed. And this is how having the faith of Yeshua and surrendering to him ties into all of this. So we all know Moses was given the 10 Commandments written on stone tablets at Mount Sinai. And I'm sure that those things were not light, right? I'm sure that they were really heavy, and he probably had a hard time carrying those things back down the mountain. So imagine you being a sinner, and you're transgressing Yah's law, and now those tablets are laying on top of you, crushing you, laying against you, if you will. That's your transgression, your sin. It's consuming you. Now imagine you cry out to be redeemed. You say you're sorry for your transgressions and that you're going to turn and start living according to the word. Now imagine Yeshua coming over and lifting those tablets off of you. That crushing weight is gone. And that's what he did for us on the cross. And that's what he'll continue to do for us if we surrender to him. He takes the burdens of sin and the burdens of this world away from us. He lifts that weight and he sets us aside and makes us holy like him. So the least we can do is the things that he asked us to, which honestly really isn't that much. Keeping the commands of God, all of them, not just the 10 Commandments, is definitely an issue of salvation. And you can read more about the commands that Yah gave us in the book of Exodus and the book of Leviticus. And you can read about the feasts of Yah in the book of Leviticus. Really, the first 5 books of the Old Testament is the law, the Torah. But really, I consider the whole Bible to be Torah. Wherever there is a command throughout the Old or the New Testament, that is Torah. That is the law. So, but the first 5 books of the Bible were the commands that were given, the commands that we will keep forever. Anyways, the hard questions we have to ask ourselves here when it comes to these things is, 1, does this align with his word? 2, is this his way or is this my way? Number 3, am I doing this for Yah or am I doing this for myself? Because Yah says to not keep the traditions of men. And the traditions of men are for ourselves. They're selfish. They're not about him. They're about us. The second book of Thessalonians, chapter 2, line 10 says, "And all with unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive love of the truth, that they may be saved." The entire Bible and the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses that contain the law, is God's truth, his only truth. And remember, God's end-time saints are commandment-keeping people. Revelation chapter 14, line 12. "Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of Yahuwah and the faith of Yeshua." Now, I want to leave you with just one thing before we move over to the Bible study topic. If you have to ask yourself if it's a salvation issue, it's a sign that it probably is. Because if something is according to Yah's word, then we shouldn't have to ask. We already know. We know what's according to his word. Okay, so the Bible study topic this week is America and Bible prophecy. And for those who didn't read the study, you can go read it on my website on the weekly Bible study page. And you can get back to my website by clicking that little drop-down bar in the corner on the left. And I'll be posting my new Bible study topic on Sunday, and the current one is going to get moved over to the archives. So, what role is America going to play in the end times? This is actually pretty interesting, especially if you're familiar with who the Whore of Babylon is and what the Mark of the Beast is really about. So, we know John has a vision, right? And in his vision, he sees two beasts. One is a sea beast and another is a land beast. And a beast in Bible prophecy represents a kingdom. And America is this land beast that he's speaking about, and Rome is the sea beast. But we're going to dive into Rome another time. And this land beast that John sees has horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon, meaning it presents itself holy and of Yeshua, but it speaks blasphemies and false doctrines of Satan. And a lot of the prophecies in the Old Testament and the New Testament are about Rome and the fall of Rome. Daniel chapter 7, line 3 tells us all other beasts, kingdoms, rose out of the sea, meaning that they were amongst many well-populated nations. And if we go back a verse and read Daniel chapter 7, line 2, it also confirms that other world powers rose through strife and conflict. And I'll compare this with the earth beast in Revelation 13. The second beast, the earth beast of Revelation 13, is a kingdom that rises out of the earth, which is an obvious opposite to the sea and denotes that it rose not among other nations and war and strife, but in the place of wilderness on its own. And there's only one end-time power that fits that description, and it's America. You're going to have to hold on just a minute, guys. I'm going to have to pause this real quick and move because I'm starting to get rained on. So hold on just a minute. Alright, sorry about that, guys. I was getting rained on. Had to come relocate real fast. Okay, so we're going to go back real quick. So yeah, if we go back a verse to Daniel chapter 7, line 2, it also confirms that other world powers rose through strife and conflict. And now if we compare this with the earth beast of Revelation 13, the second beast, the earth beast, is a kingdom that rises out of the earth, which is an obvious opposite to the sea and denotes that it rose not among other nations in war and strife, but in a place of the wilderness on its own. And the only end-time power that fits that description is America. And America wasn't well populated until about the 1700s, when the Protestants were fleeing Europe from persecution. And America rose to becoming a world power around 1798. At the same time, the papacy received its deadly wound, which the Bible said would happen in Revelation chapter 13, line 10. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killed with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here's the patience and faith of the saints. And this deadly wound was fulfilled in 1798 when General Berthard of France marched his army into Rome, took the Pope captive, and locked him in prison where he died. And history shows after this that the papacy was thought to be dead and buried. And this nation, this land beast, would appear Christ-like, and at one point it was in good standing with God, but it would end up speaking as a dragon, causing the world to take the mark. And I urge you to break your Bibles out and read about this. You can study this up and down, pray on it. No other kingdom fits this description but America. It's no doubt that America is a global superpower. We have embassies in every country, basically. We're a leading power in most everything. We have the largest defense system in the world, and we spend more on our military than any country. And even if it may not seem like it as of recently, we're one of the most powerful and influential countries in the world. But don't fear, and that's actually a command too. God tells us to not be scared. These things must come to pass. So what about the two horns, written into the law of the land? America declared that church and state should never unite, that every man would be permitted to worship Yah according to the dictates of his conscience. And this fits the two lamb-like horns. Now horns in prophecy, they normally represent kings and kingdoms. But could this be the case here? Well, did America set up two kingdoms or two ruling authorities from the start? Yes. The two political parties that were started were known as the Federalists and the Democrat Republicans, which became the Democrats, the Liberals, and the Republicans, the Conservatives. And everything in America is governed by these two parties. The two horns could also represent the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which stand for civil and religious liberty. America was based on republicanism, a government without a king, and Protestantism, a church without a pope. So either way, this country has been led by two authorities, which means two horns on the beast. And Revelation says that this earth beast will cause the earth to worship the image of the first beast whose wound had been healed. And who have we been seeing more and more of in the recent years? The Pope and the Vatican. And for the last few decades, the Pope and Rome have been gaining their popularity back. And did you know that the Vatican City is actually its own country separate from Italy? And the Vatican is a global diplomatic power, and it's also the richest institution in the entire world. They own all of the banks, and they're the only religious institution in the world that are allowed to enter into diplomatic relations with other countries. And if you think I'm crazy, feel free to Google all these things for yourself and pray on it. So this country was lamb-like, but soon began to speak as a dragon. Revelation chapter 13, lines 11 through 12. And he spake as a dragon, and he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. As we learned earlier, the dragon represents Satan, who used papal Rome to enforce religious laws and persecute and kill God's true people who wouldn't adhere to them. So Satan will use America like he used the Roman Catholic Church during the Dark Ages to enforce religious laws upon the world. And America will start to speak the way that the Roman Catholic Church spoke in the Dark Ages. And you will notice here in the verses above that the earth beast causes the world to worship the first beast, the sea beast. So America will cause the world to obey the Roman Catholic Church in some way. And we can clearly see today in America that the government has started doing away with the rights and freedoms of people in preparation for the mark of the beast, which is soon to come. And who's been at the forefront of attacking and taking control of other countries? America. I mean, we have been for years. It's an interesting fact that the beast is also referred to as the false prophet in Revelation chapter 19, line 20, and in Revelation chapter 20, line 10. Because to be a false prophet, you have to say you come in the name of Yah, but your teachings prove false. Your teachings don't align with his. Does America proclaim to be a Christian nation under God? Yes. The so-called Protestants who once fled to the shores of America to escape the false teachings and the persecutions of the Roman Church have now turned their back on Yah, and they're running back to their mother Babylon. Even on the banknotes in America, they have printed, "In God we trust." But alongside it is other devilish symbols like the pyramid and the all-seeing eye, and the presidents who proclaim to serve Yah, but the actions of these American leaders show that they proclaim to be false. Revelation chapter 13, line 14 through 15. And deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword, and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, and the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. The image of the beast isn't a physical one, it's a spiritual one. It's a uniting of church and state for one common cause. This call for world unity that we keep hearing about, it's dangerous, and it will bring on the mark of the beast eventually. Yah does not want to roll in diplomatic matters, the matters of men. They do not concern him. He's too righteous, and he's too holy for them. And not only that, he doesn't want people to be forced into serving him. He wants you to serve him because you love him, because you want to serve him on your own free will. He wants you to love him just like he loves you. Our God is one of love. There can be no doubt about this. The mark of the beast, I wanted to say too, also is not a physical mark like a microchip or an ID card. It is also a spiritual one. It's the mark of the beast comes down to who we worship. Do we worship Yah and do we walk in the ways of Torah, or do we worship man and do we keep his traditions? Keeping the laws and traditions of men is going to bring the mark of the beast upon you. And you can read more about this on my website on the related content tab under the personal studies section. It's titled Mark of the Beast. And America is going to speak and cause the world to take it. Now, what does speak and cause mean in the Bible? It means to make something a law. America is going to be the one to speak and cause Sunday law into action. I also urge you guys into reading up on Sunday law. It's a very real proposed idea that's just waiting for the right time to be enforced, and it will be the mark of the beast. Keeping Sunday as your Sabbath day of rest will cause the mark of the beast to be written in your right hand and on your forehead. Where on the other hand, those that keep the word of Torah and have the faith and the testimony of Yeshua and surrender to him and walk in his ways will be marked with the seal of Yah in their right hands and their forehead. This is why keeping the seventh day, your Sabbath day of rest, is so very vital. It's commanded by our wonderful and merciful God, and it was commanded by Yeshua as well. Yeshua was the Word. He is the Word. He is the way that we are supposed to walk. And only through him do we get grace in the eyes of the Father. Now, I also want to say that I'm not saying you cannot worship Yah on Sundays at all. Like, we should worship Yah every day. He is worthy of our praise every day. But it should not be your day of rest. Sunday should not be the day that you do no work and spend the day with Yah. Your day to personally spend with him, to delight in his word and speak with him through prayer, to feast with him at dinner, because he specifically said that he keeps the seventh day Sabbath, which is Saturday. And keeping the seventh day Sabbath, it goes deeper than not working or going to church. It's about Yah. It's about building a relationship with him. It was made for us, yes, but it's about him. It's a sign of the covenant that we made with him and with Yeshua. And Yah blessed this day, and he sanctified it so that we would spend it with him, worshiping him and loving him. He will not join us in our ways, in the ways that we want to worship him, because he told us through his word how he wants to be worshiped. It's not about us and what we want. None of it is, and it never has been. It's about him and what he wants. He will only dwell with us and bless us if we follow his ways, using only his instructions. And the last thing I want to leave you with before we wrap up is this. It's something that Yeshua said that we should all think about. He said in John chapter 14, line 15, "If you love me, you will guard my commandments." If we love Yeshua, we will guard his commandments, because they are holy and they are everlasting. And his Father's word is his word. And his Father's law is his law. And his Father's days are his days too. They all foreshadowed his coming. And now they foreshadow his second coming. He is the king. He inherits the kingdom. He is everything that Yah is. I want you to just let this kind of sit upon you today and digest it, because this is very important. Yah is not going to join us in our ways. He is only going to join us in his ways. He is only going to bless his ways. He's only going to sanctify his ways. It's not about us and our selfish desires. It's about him. And the closer we get with him, Yeshua will make us righteous. He will make us righteous enough to dwell with him and to dwell with the Father as well. We cannot dwell with them if we keep living in our fleshly, worldly ways. Okay, so let's go ahead and close up. We're going to close up with a prayer. Yah, I want to thank you for allowing me to speak your testimony today, for allowing my viewers to receive your message. I ask that you humble their hearts and strengthen their minds so that they can see the great knowledge in your words, so that they can see that your word is one of love. In Yeshua's name I pray. Amen. All right, thank you so much for joining me today. Sorry I got a little crazy there for a minute, but you guys enjoy the rest of your Sabbath days. Sabbath days. It's been a long week. You guys enjoy the rest of your Sabbath day. Shalom.